Professor Shlomo Avineri, thank you very much for joining Jerusalem Center Online and for appearing before the Sykes-Picot Agreement Conference here in Jerusalem. You talked about the Westphalian model for statehood, and as if it was almost destined to fail in the Middle East. Why is that so?
Well, we know it only after the fact. The Sykes-Picot Agreement started a process which then was continued by a number of peace treaties in the Middle East, the Sevres Treaty of 1920, the San Remo Agreement of 1920, and of course the Lausanne Agreement, finally the Lausanne Peace Treaty with Turkey in 1923. And the idea behind those agreements was that you can establish in the Middle East some things that happened already in Europe from the 7th, 18th century, as well as the establishing of modern sovereign nation states where allegiance to the state is supreme to allegiance to tribe, region, ethnicity, etc. And that the state is the only legitimate representative to the outside world. And therefore countries like Syria and Iraq and Lebanon were established. And in a different way, countries like Libya and Sudan were the inheritors of Italian and British imperial colonies. It turned out that when those countries are being challenged, or the regimes or the rulers are being challenged, the primary allegiance and legitimacy for most of the population is not to the state, not to the ruler, not to the state, not to the country, but to their historical, ethnic, religious, and regional identities. And therefore we see the disintegration of Iraq with a de facto Kurdish state in the north, and the civil war between Sunnis and the Shias in Iraq is not yet over, and we see the complete disintegration of a country like Syria. We have now to remember that countries like Iraq and Syria and Libya and Sudan never existed as discrete countries before they were set up as colonies or mandates by British imperialism. And this whole system now comes unraveled.
Does this standard apply to a country like Egypt?
Egypt is very different, because Egypt was not set up by Sykes-Picot or by any of the agreements. Egypt is an historical entity going back 5,000 years ago, and therefore it has cohesion. Even the Christian Coptic minority in Egypt is considered Egyptian. It's probably more Egyptian than Egyptian Muslims. And it is a coherent entity. It has a lot of internal problems, economic, political, social, but the very identity of Egypt is taken for granted. The identity of Syria, Iraq, Libya, Lebanon in a way, even Yemen is being now seriously challenged, and we're in for a long period of instability. I'm not sure what's going to be, come out of that series of civil wars and disturbances, but to imagine that countries like Syria or Iraq or Libya will be re-established as coherent Arab nation states is probably not on the cards.